Great. Okay, well, let's kick off. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for making time to join today and to take a moment to really think about the bigger picture of what success means for you and how we might reframe that, how we might think about some different ways of approaching that. For me, I've been fascinated for years, for decades, about this question of what does success really look like? We often think that there are images around us that tell us, that teach us what success is about. We often feel that there are kind of standards or things we need to achieve that are often quite narrowly defined, perhaps determined by others, not even thought of for ourselves. And increasingly so. I have studied in the process of writing my book, The Long Win, all sorts of different traditionally successful people in sport, in education, in business, and in politics. And I found that what we often hold up to be successful, the people we hold up to be the winners, when we look a little closer and when we look over a slightly longer time frame, aren't always as successful as we might first think. So I want us to course correct, to reshape our lens on what success looks like, and to think about actually how we can define success in a meaningful way for ourselves. You see, I found in sport that there were gold medalists who had got to the top step of the podium, but felt unhappy, felt unfulfilled, even depressed. What's gone wrong? There were people like Victoria Pendleton, who won a gold medal in Beijing and said she didn't feel like celebrating at all. Johnny Wilkinson has talked about how he chased the next title, the next cap, how he expected winning the World Cup would bring joy, but in his own words, the joy never came. What's going on for these sports people who get to the top step, the thing they've been chasing for such a long time, and yet they don't feel that fulfillment that they perhaps hoped and expected they would find? Often what's happened is this journey to success has become quite narrowly defined and disconnected from things that really matter to us. I found in the business world that there are lots of leaders who have great titles and salaries and bonuses. And I spoke to a Harvard Business School alum who had said he had achieved everything that he'd set out in his picture of success when he was studying in business school. But now, 15 to 20 years on, he felt like he was wasting his life. He didn't enjoy going to the office each day, and he wondered what he'd missed along the way. I often work with organizations in my role as a coach and in leadership development and team development. I find organizations that have winning goals and aims, and they want to be the best and they want to be number one. And yet a lot of people in the organization are disengaged, demotivated, demoralized even. So how can they be wanting to win and yet others not able to connect with that? What we find is that this urge just to be the best is empty if it doesn't mean something that's of relevance to each of us on a daily basis. In education, we see schools chasing the top of the league tables. We see pupils chasing bagfuls of A-star grades, but also not always leaving in good mental and physical health and not always having developed the qualities required to be successful beyond school. In my work in leadership development, I see lots of leaders struggling to realize that their stellar academic career hasn't always set them up to be an effective leader, where they require skills of empathy, of understanding what makes teams work, of developing cognitive diversity, innovation, collaboration in their organizations, none of which they developed on the way to their A grades. So we see a need to define success in a way that actually helps us to succeed rather than in a way that can sometimes hold us back. What I found in organizations is that we often have a real focus on certain aspects and overlook other things that matter. So we're going to have a look at our motivation at a deeper level, not just the external motivation to get the next bonus or hit the next deadline or reach the next target, to think about how we can grow and learn, and to think about the people at work, our colleagues, our networks, and in our personal lives that often are where we find the deeper fulfillment in what we do. But first of all, before we get going any further, I'd like to ask you just on the chat, find a chat box and tell me, if I ask you, what does success mean to you? What does it look like? What phrase or what word comes into your mind? So find the chat box. We all know where it is by now. And I'd love to hear some language. But what does success look like for you? So just a word, just a phrase, whatever is popping into your head, whatever image that you have at this moment, just share that so that we can, again, connect a little ourselves, all of us making time to think about this today. Brilliant, thanks. Some great thoughts already coming in. Health is the first one that's coming in there. Empowerment, gosh. You know, Emma is also thinking about some of those traditional images of competitions and awards and tenders, which is what our organizations often hold up to be success. So please continue to add that into the chat box. Yeah, being at the top of your game, Joe. I wonder, yeah, what does that really mean? What does that really require? Christine, achievement and fulfillment. Those are big, powerful words. They're abstract words as well. They don't always necessarily relate to some of the metrics that we have. How do we measure fulfillment? We find ourselves in a world where we're broadening what success looks like. And that's what I want us to do today, to think about what else matters to us that's not always easy to measure, that isn't in the spreadsheets that we seem to be sort of poring over at the end of each month or each quarter. And I think you're right, Emma. There is this point about what maybe it should be around people and family. And even though you say maybe it should be, do you know what? Let's take the should out. What do we think it is? When we have success defined as what we think it ought to be, then actually we're not really bought into what we believe it to be. And there are so many things when we're growing up that we feel our parents are telling us what we should be doing, what we should be achieving. And at school that carries on. And then in the workplace that carries on. And actually we get to a point where I'm sure lots of you that are attracted to join together are thinking, do you know what? I need to define this for myself in a way that makes sense to me. And I think, Jacqueline, some of that language you're bringing in there of authenticity and really knowing who I am and what I want, not what others are telling me I should want, it's how we want to go. So I'm loving that sort of Emma and Jacqueline are starting to go a little bit deeper, which is what we're going to be thinking about today. So often we kind of concentrate in our organizations on, you know, this circle on the left about the roles we have, the responsibilities, the results. These are all the things that are easily measurable. They're the things we can see and we can measure, and we can put them in charts and talk about them. But all of these things are driven by the next level, if you like, of who we are, which is our mindset, our behaviors, and our relationships. These are the things that actually drive the success we have. They drive the way we go about the different aims that we have, the way we think, the way we behave, and the way we connect with others. And I find that if we start to invest in these areas, then we start to really grow and explore what's possible for us. Thinking about our mindset, our behaviors, and our relationships. Now, these often aren't scheduled. We don't have a Tuesday afternoon kind of 2 p.m. slot where we think about our mindset. But we need to find time to reflect on these areas because they're driving everything that we do, every impact we have at a meeting. What's the mindset we're bringing to it? Are we there just to sort of tick off the objectives and the agenda points and create some action points? Or are we perhaps there to create a different impact on the others there, to influence in a different way, to deepen relationships, to understand more about others' perspectives? So again, thinking about how do these things play out for you? Because the good news is about the circle on the right, we have lots of control over these things. Now, we live in a world where there's so much beyond our control, and we felt that more than ever over the last year. But the way we think, the way we behave, and the way we connect with others is something that we have huge influence over deciding. And I want us to be a bit more intentional about that, to think about how the way we think, behave, and connect with others can actually link into our picture of success on a daily basis, as well as success on the long term. So great. I love that, Amanda. Yeah, feeling I've made a difference to someone. That can be so powerful. And one of the dangers is that we miss some of these brilliant success metrics that you are collectively putting in the chat box. We don't have these on our to-do list often. We don't have these down in our objectives. And yet they're the things that can make our work the most meaningful. So how might we start to bring some of these elements into our picture of, have I had a good day? So it's not just, did I tick off everything that I had to do today? but actually, how have I made a difference to someone, as Amanda says there? Because that's actually going to outweigh all of the things we've ticked off. Now, I don't mind having a task list. It's a useful organizational tool, but that's where it ends. It doesn't tell us whether we're really moving towards some of the more meaningful things. And we need to think about that broader picture of what does success today looks like beyond the task list. So there are three themes that I'm going to talk us through, the three themes of the long win, which kind of helps us to access another level of performance, resilience, leadership, and learning. And these are to think about the 3 C's of clarity, constant learning, and connection. And these are themes to take away with you. They're not ticking off themes. They are ways of thinking, approaches to be constantly clarifying what matters, what's really important to us, to have that constant learning mindset that actually success is about how we are growing, how we are learning, regardless of the ups and downs we have in terms of outcomes along the way. And to think about the connections that we're making, because we can't succeed on our own. So I'm going to ask you some more questions as we start to clarify what matters. So clarity starts for us in our own minds. And all of these themes have come through my experience of Olympic sports, 10 years as an Olympic rower, competing at 3 Olympic Games, then working as a diplomat for 12 years out in a really stressful world, often in conflict parts of the world, conflict-affected parts of the world. A very different, messy world, but still a world that revolved around relationships, connecting, working in negotiating teams to do our best. I'm a parent, so I'm well aware of the experience now of schooling and thinking about how can I support my children to explore what's possible, not necessarily are they top of the class or not. And in my work now in executive coaching and leadership development, again, I find myself having conversations with individual leaders and organizations about what really matters. Now, this starts with ourselves. So we need to think, first of all, what matters for us before we can think about what matters beyond us in the world around us. So I have a really simple question to ask you first of all, which is what gets you out of bed in the morning. Now, I want you to add your thoughts in the chat, but before you do this, I don't want to hear about alarm clocks, about the kind of automatic pilot things that get us up each day. I want to think about what you look forward to when you get up, when you have your shower, when you're having your breakfast. What are the things that make your work feel meaningful? What are the things that energize you when you think about the day ahead? What are the things that make it worthwhile to get out of bed in the morning, besides the fact that the alarm clock's going off and there's parents and children and pets and all sorts of things at the moment? So again, just to think about what is that? And you're right, sometimes it's challenging, it's not immediately obvious, and there's definitely periods of time when we can answer that more clearly than others. But often it is some of those small things that, as Sharon said, just making a difference to someone today. We can have definite challenges in our life where we're not sure whether we are, in the right job or not, or whether it's going well or not. But we can still often find that there are kind of meaningful moments of connection in that day that we can have. Emma, I love that. Kind of looking forward to doing a good job with something I'm well prepared for. Yeah, great. Let's hear some other thoughts about what are the things you look forward to when you think about the working day ahead. What else is there that that you kind of get a bit of energy when you think about, yeah, that's coming up today. That's going to mean that it's worthwhile, even if it's still just switching on our laptops. What are those things? Yeah, making a difference, Christine. Great. Valuable to society. So absolutely, if our work is meaningful beyond ourselves, then that is one of the best ways of motivating ourselves. And this is part of the long win, to understand motivation at a deeper intrinsic level, about linking to a sense of purpose, not just about what's the next deadline, what's the next externally set requirement that I have to meet, a deadline, a target, a meeting. To think about, yeah, that bigger purpose. Now, sometimes, again, it's really easy to answer this question, and sometimes it's less easy, and that's okay. There's no need to feel any pressure. But the more we can link what we do to something outside of ourselves, a change, a difference that we want to see, you know, the more we can help. I don't know, Christine, if you're able to sort of go to that next step and almost tell us how you feel your work is of value to society. And again, there's no pressure here. We don't all have to be working on the scale of Greta Thunberg to save the environment every day. But it's really important to feel that our work matters. It makes a difference to someone else somewhere, even in a small way. What are those things that we're doing that connect? What is that sense of purpose? If we have a sense of a broader purpose, that we do something that's valuable to our communities, to our clients, to society, then we are able to be more resilient and more creative. We're able to deal with the challenges that come up because we know why it matters to get around them. So it's basic behavioral psychology that if we know why something matters, then we're able to come up with solutions when we hit roadblocks around the way. So again, we're really focusing on that why. Quite often at work, we're focusing on the what, just the list of tasks to be done. But today I want to broaden success around why and how we go about things. How are we doing things in a way that's meaningful, again, beyond that kind of lasting result? If we think about kind of the next question I want to ask, what does success look like on a daily basis? So what are all the things that we can do that will make today successful? So this isn't about outcomes. It's not about hitting targets today. What are the things we can do that enable us to perhaps grow, have a meaningful connection, have a sense that we've supported someone else, made a difference to someone else? So bringing lots of those success metrics that you've already created in the chat box into our sense of what does success look like. When I was training as an Olympic athlete, then we used to do this on a daily basis, create a picture of success that was within our control. Now, we knew that we were still aiming at the end of the day to going as fast as we possibly could at the World Championships or at the Olympics. We knew what that looked like. But we needed to make sure that on a day like today, when there's no medals handed out, when there's nobody turning up to watch us, when we're not going faster than the rest of the world, how can we make sure that today is meaningful? And we would make sure we would break down all of the elements that are required for that peak performance and think about how can we do those better today than we did them yesterday. So that's not just the easily measurable stuff. It's not just going faster than everybody else or how much weight you lift and all of those kind of easy metrics. It's also about what's the quality of relationships within the crew, with the coach, with others that are supporting us. How well am I recovering? What's the mindset that I'm bringing to today's training? What are the ways in which I'm developing being a good team member and working to support and challenge those around me? These were just as important to work on as the easily measurable elements of how fast are we going, because I need all of those if I'm to achieve that peak performance, if I'm to be able to think and communicate almost telepathically with my crewmates in the Olympic final. That comes from every day getting to know them, communicating, exploring how we can communicate better, working out how we can give each other feedback and continuing to develop that. So make sure we have a sense of what does success look like today that isn't dependent on outcomes, but actually really dependent on the elements that matter to us and that we have control over. And that includes the way we think, behave, and the way that we connect with others around us. Emma, I'm loving your kind of thinking that you're sharing there, and I can hear you sort of starting to think aloud about actually, yes, what is success other than, just chasing a career ladder? Because there's a great sort of quote that I only heard recently by Stephen Covey, a very kind of well-known management author and leader, who talks about, be careful of chasing for the top level of a ladder of success, because you may get to the top and find that the ladder's on the wrong wall. So we always chase that end point. And I think there's lots of us, that get caught in that are even taught to do that. But we're not necessarily actually chasing something that's meaningful. We need to make sure that each rung of the ladder is helpful to us and has meaning within itself. And we need to think about that bigger purpose, the wall that we're on, that we're climbing up. So great, Sonal, it's good to make sure that we are really taking control of the areas that we can develop to the maximum, rather than often there are lots of things out of our control, and that leads to quite a stressful experience when we're caught, you know, really trying to do things that we can't control. I think that's what you're getting at in your comment, but if not, just explain it a bit more for me. So another question that I really like to ask that broadens success criteria is to think about, what experience do you want to have in your role? And what's the experience that you want to have others to have of working with you? So again, you know, defining experience, it's a word that Gareth Southgate uses a lot. If you listen to him in his interviews, that he can't control the results in the football matches. They depend on referees, how competitor teams play, you know, balls hit crossbars, you know, miss narrowly, get called offside. So all he can do is make sure that he creates an environment within which his team can thrive and be at their best. And he talks about wanting to create the best experience for his team and the support team, so that then they can give their best on the pitch and optimize the chances of getting the best results possible. But there's no control over those. So again, we're talking here now much more about the quality of experience that you have, rather than the quantity of tasks that we have to do or targets that we have to reach. So we're often rebalancing through the long win our sense of what success looks like in qualitative measures, not just quantitative, how far have I got on the rungs of that ladder. So there are lots of questions. There are lots more questions in my book to help us think about what are the, you know, the ways in which we can broaden success criteria and clarify what matters to us, and then make sure we're putting our time into what really matters, not just being busy doing the things that are in front of us or the things that are urgently calling at us for our time, but that we can make a conscious choice to spend time on the things that matter to us. Again, that check-in that Christine talks about there, to make sure that we're actually spending time on the things that fulfill your purpose. Great. So the next theme of the long win is one of learning, constant learning. And you know, this was part of how sports psychology has shifted to help athletes to get their best performance. We separate out in sports psychology the concepts of results and performance. Now, often we mix these up in the business world in large parts, you know, in our lives. But it's really important. It's a useful difference to separate them. We still want the best results, but we can't control those because they depend on lots of external factors. What we can control is developing our best performance that we bring to the race to optimize the results. And that our best performance is within our control. It's about developing all of the aspects of who we are. So again, not just the technical, easily to measure academic ones, but also how we lead, how we show up, how we connect with others, how we work in the team, how we look after ourselves and recover so that we're able to keep going for the long term. So thinking about how do we invest in our best performance is, you know, one of the ways in which we can ensure that we are investing in our growth that actually gives us the best outcomes, but we're not just worrying about the outcomes all the time. But you know what, when sometimes we don't have the best results and outcomes, we've still gained because we've got that personal growth, we've got that learning. So athletes think about being world-class at improving each day, not about being world-class at winning, not because they don't want to win, they want that as much as ever, but they know that the best way to optimize their chances of winning is to be improving maximally on a daily basis, and to focus on that as sitting at the heart of our picture of success. If we're learning, if we're growing, then we are succeeding, and we will over time optimize the results that we get. And we'll also optimize that sense of personal growth and fulfillment along the way, because it's the learning that we take with us after each result. The results are finite, they finish, but we go on in between and after the results to think about what comes next. And it's the learning that we take with us. There are lots of different ways and behaviors in which we can learn. You know, it's important to just be open to it in the first place, not to see different ways of learning as somehow an acknowledgement that we're not good enough yet, or that we don't know everything yet, or threatening us. We want to have this growth mindset where we're open to learning, open to feedback, seeking feedback, looking for it. And then it's easier to start to develop those kind of really useful learning behaviors. Feedback is a key one of these. And seeking feedback is one of the best ways in which we can grow. So not just waiting for others to come and give us feedback, but actually going and seeking it. And we know from the neuroscientists who've wired up people in organizations that we often feel a bit threatened when we're given feedback. We shut down a little bit, we're defensive, we feel maybe we're being attacked for not being good enough. So we want to, if we're in that growth mindset, we want to be open to learn when anyone gives us feedback. But the best way of all to learn is to seek the feedback, to go proactively to others, to really think about, what do I want to learn about? Who do I want to learn from? What areas do I want to develop? Because then we have a conversation about the things that we want to develop, and the people we ask feel valued. They're not worrying about whether we're open to feedback, whether it's going to come as a surprise or a shock to us. So if we can be actively seeking feedback about the areas we want to develop, then that gets us the best learning outcomes. It creates a culture in which learning is just endemic in who we all are, that we're looking to learn, we're sharing what we want to learn, and we're also including the best source of learning within our organizations. Almost nobody will say no if you want feedback from them. They might not be able to do it in that moment, but honestly, I guarantee you, people will feel valued and will want to give advice and to feel that they can contribute and help, and will be glad to know that you're interested in their views. So thinking about how you use feedback, who do you get feedback from? Who do you ask for feedback from is a great kind of constant learning question. The next piece is think about how often do you reflect and review along the way? Again, we would do this on a very regular basis in that Olympic performance world, and we would do it regardless of results. Didn't matter whether we won or lost. We would always ask, what's gone well? What can we improve? What one or two things are we going to do differently? Even if I've won against the rest of the world, we would still ask, okay, what are the things that helped us to get that success? Let's understand those. And then we would ask, okay, what are the things we're going to improve? Because we need to go faster next time. Now, we would then think, what are we going to do differently? It's the same questions if we lose a race. And I lost many races, but within them, there were things I did that were world class. It would be crazy to throw that out of the water because the overall result wasn't good. Because those are the things that are going to help us to succeed next time. So we ask the same questions. What's going well? What are the areas that we need to improve? What are we going to do differently? And that creates a resilience, a learning resilience that doesn't have us on this high and low, the roller coaster of results, but helps us to think about how can we just optimize improvements. Win or lose, we want to do better next time. So let's just focus on that. Here's some questions which, yes, as Ellie has said, the session is recorded, so you can kind of watch it again if you want. These are some questions. Take a quick picture with your phone if you want. Some questions to think about after the session, if you'd like to continue reflecting on how can you develop those kind of skills of feedback and review, and how might you develop that a bit further. Now, we also had this kind of theme of marginal gains and making sure that we looked at all the small things that we could improve within the sports world. It's been hugely a part of the revolution, if you like, of the Olympic team, from winning only 1 gold medal in 1996 and winning 29 in London, 2012, and being second in the medal table in Rio. It was not just about learning to do more either, because as an athlete, we can't do more. We train probably 3 times a day, about 2 hours physical training each. So 6 hours a day, 7 days a week, most weeks of the year. The answer isn't another hour in the gym. It's about doing things differently. It's about being smarter and improving the quality of what we do. So we use marginal gains as a means of trying to develop how we think and the different ways in which we can improve. So I've got a bit of a quiz now to ask you about some things. There we go. Some of the concept of marginal gains is doing lots of things, consistently 1% better, that over time adds up to a really significant improvement. So I've got 3 pictures here, bit of a quiz for you. How do these pictures connect with a way of improving performance that wasn't about working harder or doing more, but about doing things differently? So what's the top picture? What can we see in that? What's that all about? Sort of tapping into your creative thinking now, your your innovative thinking, your ability to see things differently. Yeah, so you're on the right theme, Sonal and Jacqueline. It's about rest, it's about sleeping well, but what's actually in the picture? What are we looking at here? Really simple thing. What can we see in front of us? Because you're jumping ahead, whereas part of this is about seeing our environment in a different way. So we're looking at pillows. Yeah, you're right. Emma's going, what's this question about? What are you on about? We're looking at pillows. And what did the athletes do differently? Well, in Rio, Team GB took their own pillows to the Olympic Games. Really, really simple. Didn't cost anything. They don't weigh anything, so really easy to do. And what are the benefits? Multiple benefits. There's a hygiene benefit from having your own pillow. There's a comfort benefit. There's a familiarity benefit in a place that's incredibly intimidating when you get to that Olympic village and surrounded by the best people in the world, with the Olympic stadium and the flame burning just out of the window as you look across the village. Making this feel like somewhere where you can be at your best and be at home is really helpful. There's an ergonomic benefit, making sure that you have the right shoulder to neck ratio when you're sleeping that you're used to, so you don't wake up with a crick neck in the morning when you're about to go and race the rest of the world. More than anything, this just shows the mentality of looking at your environment, looking at something you completely take for granted, and thinking, how might I do something slightly different here that will set me up better? It's something that's within my control to make a really small but important difference. Lots of elements beyond our control when we get to Olympic Games, but let's look after the things that we can look after. Great. Okay, look at the picture, bottom left. What can we see there? What's that a picture of? Yeah, great, spot on, Emma. It's a simulator, it's a flight simulator. And what do we learn, or what do pilots learn in a flight simulator? What's going on there? It's it's a form of training, but what sort of skills, what sort of are being trained, are being developed when we're in a flight simulator? We're absolutely, we're looking at all sorts of different scenarios, Emma, that's right. We're looking at a safe place in which to test, in which to explore, in which to learn how to fail, how to crash, but it's safe, so that we can really understand at what point things could go wrong and how we might correct them then. Absolutely, Christine, spot on. It's mental skills. Yeah, we are developing what sort of mental skills? Reactions, decision-making under pressure, awareness of how we respond under pressure and how we might want to shift that response to be more constructive, more helpful to us. So this was used by taking Olympic coaches to meet some pilots in the RAF to try out a flight simulator, to talk about how pilots learn to manage extreme pressure and make really good decisions, critical decisions in the heat of the moment. Just like coaches have to make decisions on the front line sometimes of events and matches and competitions and give the best advice possible. This is coaches going out of their own world to learn from another high performance world, a safe place to learn, fail, and learn about yourself. Great. Well, the picture on the right, we actually all know what that's about now. As an elite athlete, we would always wash our hands very regularly, and it was taught, we were given lectures and had it explained to us by nurses and doctors. Absolutely, Emma, hand washing is so important to good health. It minimizes the risk of infection. So as an elite athlete, we would wash our hands very thoroughly, very frequently. We would carry antibacterial gels. We would avoid public transport. We would avoid busy public areas and cinemas. And that's now become a part of all of our lives. So there's a little element of being an elite athlete that has entered our lives over the last year or couple of years. But again, it's that attitude to looking after small things that help us set us up to succeed, that minimize some of the risks, and getting advice from other worlds outside of our own. Good. So we've stimulated some marginal gains thinking, and continue that after this webinar, and have a think about, for you, what are those 1%ers and things you might do differently? Not doing more, but doing things differently, being a bit smarter about how you work and how you improve something that you have the control and the opportunity to choose to improve. have a think about how you develop a constant learning mindset in your own world and create an environment for those around you to learn as well, and think about those small wins that you could make in how you learn each day. Great. We're going to move on to the last theme of connections, the last C of the long win. We've looked at clarity, we've looked at constant learning, and now I want us to look at connections. To think about what are the different ways in which we can invest in the relationships. We cannot succeed on our own. And yet often I find we're putting tasks, we're putting emails ahead of connections, ahead of the people that we need in order to deliver and to be at our best. When I was working both as a diplomat, also in my career as being part of rowing teams, people sat at the heart of our success. I actually find that whatever business we're in, whatever our work, connecting with people sits at the heart of our success. So let's make sure that we are including that in our picture of what success looks like, both on a daily basis and in the longer term, that we are investing in relationships, that we are thinking about ways in which we can connect at a deeper and more meaningful level with those around us and those we encounter. I remember before I went on my first diplomatic posting to Sarajevo, having the opportunity to talk to a very wise and eminent ambassador. And he gave me some advice about how to connect. He said the first thing, that's the most important thing, is to really get to know the person behind the role, behind the job title. We all hide behind these, we have these sort of generic roles of being account managers and executives and all of these sorts of typical titles, but it doesn't tell us who we really are, what matters to us, what we care about, what gets us up in the morning, and what really motivates us at a deeper level. So start to ask questions and find that out. If I'm working in a team, I don't just want to know what people's qualifications are, what's on their CV. I want to know about who they are, what makes them tick, what are their strengths, what are the areas in which I can support them and challenge them to be at their best. The best way to do that is to listen more than we speak. It's our biggest influencing tool. It's our biggest way of connecting with others. To make sure we're listening again, listening for what's said, what's not said, not just waiting to share our own ideas and put our own thoughts over. It's our biggest negotiating tool always when we were negotiating in the diplomatic world. The force of our own ideas would never take them forward. It was only if we understood others' perspectives that we could move the conversation forward. When we've done that, we're able to identify areas that we have in common, perhaps some shared aims, and we may have very different thoughts about how we get there, but we need to find a level at which we can connect and want to make progress and share something in common. When I was working in Whitehall in my last job as part of the stabilisation unit, which was set up to support civilians working in conflict-affected parts of the world, we knew that we had to do a lot to support people beyond their technical skills, to work in environments that were hostile, that were unsafe, where there were perhaps incoming rockets and mortars in the environments, just, real, very present threats to the work that they did. How could we help people to manage these environments? We knew they needed technical skills, maybe to work in local government or to support, health or education, but they also needed personally to be able to manage an environment of extreme pressure. We did some research across people who'd worked for the government in places like Iraq and Afghanistan and South Sudan to find out what helps people to manage really challenging environments. And this is what we found out. First of all, we need to have a proactively supportive environment. So not just one where we say, oh, there's a welfare department over there, phone up if you've got a problem, or come and tell me if you've got a problem, because that's too late. We need to be caring for the people around us, to be proactively looking out for them, to know if they're at their best, to know if they're not quite themselves, and to be reaching out to support them. Then there are three areas which really we've already seen crop up. First of all, this need to be flexible and adaptable, which really is our ability to learn, to grow, to see things differently constantly. The second area is to know what we're like under pressure. Some of those things that you find out in that flight simulator. How do we respond to pressure, and how can we get feedback to understand that so that we can develop and be better and be our best selves when we're under pressure? Lastly, how can we develop those relationships? We're back to that theme of connection. That's what helps us to succeed. Resilience isn't about, just managing things on our own. Resilience is a team sport. So we need to invest in meaningful relationships that will help us through the difficult times, which we've really all been through over the last couple of years. When we were negotiating in teams, working in lots of challenging situations, we would develop these themes further by wanting to connect with others beyond just the technical side, but to think about what have people really said. We would always do a check within our negotiating team, not just about the technical content, the document that we're negotiating, an EU directive or a peace agreement, but to be thinking about what's happening in the room with the other people. We would ask about, what have the others really said? Because sometimes we think we've heard what other people have said, or we think we know what they're going to say, but we don't listen to what they actually say, or how they're really feeling about what they've said, what we've said, what others have said. What mood is there in the conversation we're having? Do others really understand what we've said? Again, we think we've been really clear, but often if we check in, we find others have expected us to say something different and may not have really heard us. We then need to think about how we can support others. Again, just having our best ideas that we're pushing forward doesn't get us to a joined, signed up solution that everyone buys into. So how can we find a way in which we can support what other people want? And most important of all, to bring that curiosity, again, a great learning behavior to everything that we do. So we don't get stuck in combat of we want one thing and other people want something different. But to think about how can we explore what else is possible. So it's been a bit of a kind of a whiz list, a kind of whirlpool whiz through these three themes to think about, how can you invest in those relationships each day to make sure that they are really a key part of success. It's about thinking about the behaviors that help us each day to invest in those behaviors. Are these part of our daily picture of success? Because these are our opportunity to connect with others, to develop those connections, to deepen those connections. So again, a kind of a discussion. We won't really have time, I don't think, today, but to think about what can you do to invest in those relationships to make sure that that's not overshadowed by the tasks on your to-do list, and to think about how you can deepen connection with others, with someone else who could add further value to what you do. I'm going to pause there in case there are any questions. These offer us, these tools, the 3 C's, give us a way of redefining success on our own terms in a way that isn't narrow and short-lived and imposed by others. We don't want success to be about just a fleeting moment in time when we hit a target or win a race, and reach the kind of quarterly results we want. We want to make sure that the way we've reached those targets brings value for what comes thereafter. That along the way, we've learned things that we can take into whatever project comes next. That we are aware of why we are doing and chasing these results. What's the bigger purpose? What's the meaning to hitting these results? So that when we do achieve them, whatever they are, we have a sense that these have lasting value beyond the moment when we open the spreadsheet. And that we are connecting, investing in each other, investing in those different ways in which we can use the networks, develop those networks, so that we're part of something that matters beyond ourselves. Really happy to take any questions, add them to the Q&A, or just add them into the chat box, which you've been doing brilliantly along the way. I wanted to leave some time. I think Ellie might come on if there's anyone that wants to put a hand up and to ask any further questions about the topics that we've looked at today, and thoughts about how this can connect to what success means to you, and redefining it in a way that will help you to explore your possibilities and potential in a better way. I'm going to pause there. I'm not sure if Ellie wants to join, if we've had any questions in the Q&A, or take a moment to reflect and think about if there's anything that we can kind of dive into a bit deeper that would be of interest. Use the chat or the Q&A. Either is fine. You've done a great job of sort of all the questions that I've asked you. Questions I always think are the best way to helping us keep clarifying what matters, keep learning, keep connecting. So I hope I've given you some more questions to take with you. Tell me, whilst we're here, tell me what's sort of resonating for you. What are you taking away? What have I got you thinking about in this time that you're leaving with? Share that, please, as well as any questions. Just stick them in the chat box or the Q&A. Tell me what's resonating. What are you thinking about? What are you reflecting on at the moment from what we've looked at? Great. Yeah, that's the kind of the small pieces, those marginal wins that over time make the difference. And definitely investing in relationships is one of those. You know, we can get away with not doing it, you know, today or tomorrow. We can get away with it. It won't hurt our results in the next month. But there is no way that we can really achieve our potential over the longer term if we're not developing all of these aspects of our mindset, behaviors, relationships, communication, recovery, looking after ourselves, team working. These are the things that help us over the longer term. There's a real danger sometimes we're not measuring these easily, but I always ask what matters that you're not measuring, and find a way for you to create a meaningful measure for it, if you like. So yeah, great to have your feedback. Thanks, Eleanor. Thanks, Emma, Jacqueline. Glad to hear some of the resonances there. That's really useful feedback for me to think about. Great. Really enjoyed spending time with you this lunchtime. Thanks so much for taking time out for a really different topic than has probably cropped up in any of your emails or conversations or meetings. And yet it's the one that's in our mind all of the time, that sits in our mind, that we carry around with us, that we ponder, that we from a very young age are thinking about what success looked like. And I hope that I've helped you to define what success means to you in a way that's meaningful, and to continue reviewing that, refining that, to reimagine what's possible. Thanks very much. Brilliant to be with you all. Really appreciated all of your interaction on the chat today.